converted man here. All right, I thought I was done, but I'm not, because I went to Twitter and I was just, going to do things there. But no, S.J. Thompson, 5 questions atheists cannot plausibly answer. Why? Why call it that? Okay, just stop. Call it something else. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the thing, and then I'm going to answer the question. But I'm also going to take note of problems in the presentation. So, it's called 5 questions atheists cannot plausibly answer. Below, I've presented 5 questions that I do not believe the atheists will be able to plausibly answer. Now, every time there's a question mark, I'm going to count that as a question. Number 1. Despite the cultural error, sane humans have the innate sense of what's right and what's wrong, and we prefer to do what's right to help our fellow humans. No matter what the major religion, we're aware of the golden rule. We prefer to be humble over the braggarts, the selfless over the selfish, and the truthful over the liars. I'm going to pause here because I have some comments to make about this. Mainly, citation required. Based on what do you say that sane humans have this innate sense of what's right and wrong? And what do you mean by that? Do you mean from birth that we have this sense? And based on what studies? Or do you mean that cultures have this? Or what do you mean by this? Because what it suggests is that there is some enormous amount of humans that from birth know what's right and wrong without being taught anything at all, I suppose. Or is what you're trying to say something else, but is simply not said? Because by saying it's an innate sense, you're implying it's from birth, which, by the way, is scientifically inaccurate. We have to learn ethics and morals. We don't know right and wrong when we're born. We have certain senses that we are born with, but unless you have some sort of data to suggest otherwise, you have an assertion here and no proof to back it up. Next paragraph. Cross-cultural sociologists and psychologists and leadership scholars like Hofstede, Triplus, House, and Schwartz. Okay, now I'm going to pause because I've said this before. If you're going to mention people, then have little numbers by their name so I can scroll all the way down to the bottom of your page and see who the bleep you're talking about, where they're talking about it, what book, who they are, what their credentials are. Now, you have your references at the bottom, but I don't know what they're in reference to because you didn't tell us that. There aren't any little numbers indicating what those references are about. So your essay, which is what this is lacking. Try better. Try to do better. So I don't know who any of these people are without looking each of them up. So and even if I did, I probably wouldn't care anyways, but I don't know what they're saying. I don't know that if they have, in fact, found societies very inconsistent with our innate morality. I don't know if anything that you were saying that they said is true or not, because no citation is given. As such, this entire paragraph, I'm going to consider irrelevant. But I count a question mark. So I will read that part that's a question mark. So how do we know what we ought to do is often inconsistent with what we're actually doing. How do we know what we ought to do? There's one question. So, okay. It assumes within that question, because questions contain premises, that hello, people on chat. I'll speak to you in a moment. Um, it assumes that we do ought to know what to do and that we know it's inconsistent. Where is the proof of that claim? Because that's an additional claim you're making without any support. I don't know that we know what we ought to do, or if we don't know that. I have no idea. Depends on who you're talking about, what group, what society, and when, and what data you're basing these things on. So the answer to that question is unanswerable because I don't have enough data at hand to answer that question, and it seems to be loaded. Remember, though, we're still on question 1, even though that's one question of question 1. So there are more question marks, which means it's not going to be 5 questions. It's going to be more than 5 questions. Evolutionary biologists have made observations to posit that their cooperative societies were better positive for survival, and over 1,000 years in the distant past, groups fared better than individuals. Yet they haven't considered that cooperation is just as likely as competition. Biochemist, something I can't pronounce, sigh, I guess, no citation, notes the errors in trying to explain human morality with evolution, which he states is about the diversity of life on Earth. Where does he state that? I don't know. No citation is given. Biologists have made the preposterous about have what? Well, I said that wrong. Biologists have also made propositions about empathy, yet I have not seen propositions on the survival value of other desirable human traits such as humility, gratitude, and forgiveness. So, either you're not doing your research well enough or they haven't done it. You want to fund them to do that? Go ahead. Go spend some money and get them to do it. One person, even if he is competent in his field, does not and cannot negate the other people in the same or similar field that are of equal or greater competency than him that disagree with him. Now, he could still be right, but who has the science on their side and who doesn't? If evolutionary biologists have made these observations and said, based on these observations, here's a good hypothesis and or theory, and some other guy comes along and says, well, I disagree, what do? We look at the data. What's his data? Don't know. You didn't give it to us. So I don't want to go with the majority on this one. But I certainly can't go with an appeal to one. So I have to be skeptical that your claims here are true. Next paragraph. Furthermore, even in ancient historical times, we have example of highly individualistic and highly successful society, such as those in ancient Greece and Rome. Yeah, successful in what sense? I mean, Rome did fall, and so did Greece. I mean, they lasted a while, but yeah. All right, blah 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 blah. Okay, so here's another question mark. So I'll read that part. So why do individuals know what we ought to help the weak, feed the poor, and be honest, humble, just, cooperative, empathetic, forgiving, and loving? There's another question mark. So that's 2 questions for question 1, and that's the same question you already asked, making this question either irrelevant or repetitive, or potentially as a question that's not meant to be answered. Why is all societies, regardless of their practices, know what we ought to do? There's a third question within question 1, and that one again implies certain things to be true, so it's a loaded question. Where did we get this moral compass? There's number 4 within question 1. And it assumes that we have a moral compass. So it's another loaded question. So every loaded question is another logical fallacy, by the way. So to recap, within the first question of the 5 questions that we atheists cannot plausibly answer, there are actually 4 questions. S.J. Thompson, have some intellectual honesty. One question mark next time. One actual question, not four labeled as one. Just one question. And it shouldn't have to be something that you lay out this complex, convoluted thing for. Either you have a question that you actually don't know the answer to, or you have a question in mind that you've already decided what the answer is. And if it's the latter, don't bother asking it. Because I've already asked you several questions that you did not answer, and you said you wouldn't answer because you said many of them were logically flawed. So you wouldn't answer those questions. Well, I'm not answering the questions that you have that are logically flawed. But anybody can make questions that somebody else can't answer or plausibly answer, whatever you mean by that. But your intellectual honesty here is missing because it's not one question, it's four. And that's just question one. Okay, now I'm going to check with the feedback from my audience. Hi, Lavender Lady Jen with one N, Beef Price, and Zod. Zod is here. Well, I haven't seen Zod in ages. Okay, so anything that I need to know about? Okay, so Lavender Lady was about to answer this. So they're gonna base, or they're gonna, I don't know what they're gonna do with what I'm saying, but they're paying close attention to this because they're gonna do a video about this. Let's see. She's dismissive of the answer she's already gotten in regards to SJ. Jen says yes. I wanted to talk to her about the atheist experience she had a year ago, and she said, "Well, I already wrote a blog about it. I read through that blog, and none of the things she addressed were things I would wanted to address with her. But it does seem to me that the conversation she had with Matt Dillahunty happened about a year ago, and from our conversation and from what I've read of hers, I don't think she has learned a single thing about the logical fallacy that she got wrong a year ago since then." And she said, "Well, I'm going to take a break from debating in regards to my prompting of her to talk about the atheist experience thing with me. So she was going to do writing and studying." And I said, "Well, if you're going to study, I suggest Informal Logic, a Pragmatic Approach by Douglas Walton, and I'll buy it for you if you want me to." Because I desperately want her to understand a logical fallacy. And I corrected her on logical fallacies she presented as if atheists were using them, which would, by the way, be another problem of straw man. But I said, look, if you're going to use these as examples, at least present the dang fallacy in the right way, which you're not doing. But, I think she mentioned, well, she studied logic during college. Yeah, well, however many years ago that was, one. Secondly, this book probably covers other things that your course probably didn't cover, two. And three, it'd be good to do a refresher course anyways, because you're getting it wrong. Okay. So, back to the questions. Thank you for everybody for the comments. If you have questions about anything I'm saying and in response or whatever, go ahead and let me know, and we'll do that. So this is question 2, or well, actually, it's question 5. Since we already had 4 questions in question 1, how do we want to number this, everybody? Anybody want to give me a different way to number this? I don't know. So here's I'm going to call it question 5.2. What accounts for the empty tomb? Oh my word. I don't even want to read the rest, but I'm going to anyways. And the resurrection of the appearance of Jesus. Okay. Hey, look, a question mark. Number 5. Ah! So I guess that was the last question. Those are the 5 questions you can't possibly answer. Thanks for listening. But that's actually the 5th question And the first question of number 2. Okay, you mean to say, because you're speaking hypothetically to atheists. So if you were intellectually honest and you wanted to actually ask us questions, I would ask you to not load your questions. What accounts for the proposed empty tomb, or the story of the empty tomb, and the supposed resurrection of Jesus? Now, I know you believe that these things happened, but you're discussing things with atheists. So by loading your question in this way, you make me have to explain that it's a loaded question, and then therefore, because it's a loaded question, I cannot answer it, and it's a logical fallacy, and because of that, I have to be skeptical of your conclusions. I have to be skeptical of why you would ask a question in this way, and I have to remind you not to do this, which all distracts me, the atheist, of interacting with you in some meaningful way. Maybe that's the point you're trying to get to. I don't know, but I thought apologetics was to not that, as in it's advertised not being that. Of course, skeptics and atheists tend to, well, I don't know if I could say we tend to agree, because who knows if we do or not, but it seems to be a common trope that I've noticed at any rate, where we think that well, you know what? Forget it. I'm not even going to say any of that. Undo everything I just said. This is what I want to say. I believe that apologetics is about convincing current believers to stay believers, and or making the believers that already believe feel intellectually okay to believe it, instead of just saying, well, it's faith, and accepting the truth that it's just faith. They want to feel like that they actually have evidence or something, so they turn to apologetics, which makes it seem like they have something to go on, even though they don't really have something to go on. So it's kind of like a intellectual, well, for lack of a better word, is intellectual masturbation. And yeah, great, but don't expect me to explain how to masturbate properly intellectually to wait. That analogy went nowhere. Anyways, so back to question 5.2, or whatever the number this is. What accounts for the empty tomb and the resurrection appearance of Jesus? Roman pagans, Jews, Christians in Jesus' time have indicated Jesus' tomb was found empty. No, they didn't. And multiple sources have indicated second-class women made the important discovery. Doesn't matter. In fact, Paul stated that 500 people, who are not named, witnessed Jesus over the next 40 days after he rose from the dead. Maybe biblical and extra-biblical sources have indicated that early Christians preached illegally in support of Jesus for decades. Beatings, savages, stonings, crucifixions, blah, 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 blah. Wait, what was the question of this? Oh, I guess the question is, what accounts for the empty tomb and resurrection of Jesus, followed by the information that led to that question. So question 2 is actually just one question. First of all, again, she gets history wrong, and this has been pointed out multiple times, not just, well, by somebody that understood history far better than I do, but I pointed it out as well. No, there isn't people there that saw this stuff and then wrote it down, because it wasn't written until, I think the earliest is what, 60, 70 years after any of this event. So you might say, well, somebody could have lived to 60, 70 years old. Back then they generally didn't, but maybe they did, you know. So somebody was old enough to have seen it, and we're now relying on their memory because they can't write or read. And then they're telling somebody else who actually can write that. So at best, we have an old guy or gal, probably a guy, let's just be honest. So we have this old dude that's like, yeah, I think that I remember this, and here's what I think that I remember. So we're I'm being as generous as possible here with how the Bible came to these stories came to be transmitted. Okay, so we have this old guy that actually saw this stuff happen, or well, he thinks he saw this stuff happen, and so then his story has to be then written down by some other guy. So if you've ever played the phone game at all, you know how difficult communication is. Well, you might say, well, that's over a lot of people. But even between one person and another, it's still complicated. And you're telling me now, not only do I have to trust old guy, but I now have to trust the other dude who's writing this down to not, make up stuff or take out stuff he didn't like or whatever. But it doesn't stop there, because it only gets worse, because another guy sits down with that first document that was written up, and that one's gotten old by now. It's gotten worn out, and they have this wonderful tradition, which is they copy what that old one said over onto the new one, because they didn't have printing presses or anything like that. So they did this by hand, and then they burn the old one. Now, if you're a historian, you don't like this, because what it means is you have no way to know that the new copy is anything like the old copy, because the old copy is gone. So we now have to trust the new person to have not taken out stuff or added stuff that they liked. Like, oh yeah, Jesus then said, hey bro, it's all cool, chill out. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. I'm not gonna include that. That would have maybe proved Jesus knew the future lingo, but he didn't know because he didn't like it, so he just took it out, right? Or maybe Jesus said, hey, hey, bitch, away with you, and he didn't like that, so he erased that. Who knows? We don't know, because it's gone. The old one's gone, and the new one's there. And then the next guy comes along and does that same thing again. So we have to trust that multiple people didn't screw up at any point in time. Just a little problem. Then another problem that we have, even if we ignored all the problems that the story has in it of how it was transmitted orally from one person to another, and then eventually written down, and then how it was then transmitted from written to written format. And then we also have to trust the Council of Nicaea kept in the relevant parts and didn't edit out more things. Then we also have to trust that the modern day Bibles, which there are several different versions of, have kept up to date with the language translations, which we know for a fact they haven't. For example, the word homosexual didn't appear in the Bible until, I want to say 1960, 70-ish, or somewhere around that time. And it actually, when you actually care about the history of the Bible and you actually care about what any of this means, like I did at one point, and you go and you look at what the dang original text says, it's not talking about homosexuality at all. So current Christians that base their belief that homosexuals are sinning are doing so based on the writing in English that we have that doesn't go into detail about what it's actually talking about and what the situation is, and therefore are basing that belief on a false belief. Who knows what other beliefs they're basing on false beliefs due to translation errors or omissions that are made either deliberately or accidentally that have been introduced over time. So, ignoring all of those problems, what accounts for the empty tomb? There wasn't one. What accounts for the resurrection? There wasn't any. It's made up. There's one answer. Now, you might not accept that answer. You might not like that answer, but it's a plausible answer. We don't have any example of anyone resurrecting from dead. Although we do have some examples of people coming back from what we thought was dead. Could it be that, somebody that got crucified as grimly as Jesus was supposedly crucified, even though they didn't have any laws that would have allowed them to do that, could survive that and also be poked in the rib with the spear, which Satan Atheist did a great video about why that's incoherent. But yeah, okay. So, by the way, they also didn't have that practice either. But yeah, so somebody that's been crucified for a while and then poked in the stomach with the spear and then thrown into a cave for a while, could somebody come out of that and be okay and be healed? I don't think so. But, and then somebody that asked Jordan Peterson about this, he was like, do you believe that Jesus could have resurrected? Now, Peterson's answer, in my mind, makes him not a Christian, but you could argue this. He said, well, I don't know what the human body is capable of. But that's a secular answer, if we think about it, because you're saying that the human body could repair itself somehow from such a Travis beating and all the things that he, assuming that he actually received all the things that it says he received, which would have been completely illegal, but it doesn't matter. We're just going to pretend that the story happened the way it says it is. So could Jesus have been Wolverine, basically? Maybe. And that at least is more plausible than it's magic. Although I'd, say, well, more plausible in the sense that it's highly implausible, but at least it's natural and mundane. But I think the easiest explanation is it didn't happen. Okay, let's make sure the chat doesn't have any complaints about anything I just said. Let's see, where did I leave off? She's preaching to the choir. She doesn't want to engage us. She's talking to the audience. Wait, how far back was I? Okay, I read that part. Let's see. She could learn logical fallacies, but on the other hand, she wants to keep being an apologist. Yes, that's true. If she studied logic, either you would have to stop being an apologist, or you could continue but be a dishonest apologist. That's what Matt Slick did. He learned it, and then he just ignored the logical fallacies. So, what accounts for the fact that people wrote a story about an empty tomb and a resurrected guy? There you go. That's a more honest question, at least. We don't have to answer for the resurrection of Christ. That's her burden of proof. Correct, Sewer Tapes. Let's see. What are the 5 questions? Exactly. SJ is asking us so far 6 questions. Keon, impronounceable last name, Eruli, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. After the 11 questions, right? Yeah. So this is following her 11 questions that we didn't answer. Now we have 6 more questions that we can't answer. Well, this time it's not that we can't answer them. We can't answer them plausibly, whatever that means. Yeah, when you don't have daily exposure to written or electronic media, even one person's mind plays telephone with itself over time. So that's kind of, I would think, in reference to our own memory. So I'll give an example from my life to some extent. Somebody I know had said, everybody has always hurt me. And I said, you don't know that. There's no way you could make that statement, because you have not kept track of every person that you've interacted with. And only if we had done that could we then say, hey, yeah, see, I have the data. Because what you're doing is you're basing it on your memory, and then you're basing it also on how the mind works. And our mind sometimes only remembers the negative stuff, and sometimes it only remembers the positive stuff. Now, sometimes there's a mix between, but when thinking back, and especially if you're an emotional, vulnerable spot in your life because things are happening to you that you don't like or that you don't have control over, and you also maybe have some anxiety and depression issues on top of that, then it might indeed feel like everybody is against you, but that doesn't literally mean that everyone has always been against you. And to be able to make a statement like that would require you to have written down the name and the date and the time and what the person's name was, and like, they did blah bad thing to me after I did blah thing, blah, whatever. And then if you had, I guess if you, kept accurate, records, and then you could say, hey, yes, see, they were bad to me. See, then at least you'd have data, but you don't have data. So you don't know how, it's like when you're thinking about maybe an argument you've had with your significant other or whatever, of course, that's erratic dialogue. So do mind my tangent, but erratic dialogue is always about not the thing that you're arguing about. So, let's say Zod and his, significant other are arguing over who took out the trash last, and they don't remember. Neither one of them remembers, but it's Zod's fault because it's always Zod's fault. I mean, come on, we know it's Zod's fault, but he didn't take it out. Well, that's not what the argument's actually about. The deeper basis of that conflict is something completely else. And what the two people will do is verbally try to hit each other out. They'll try to insult each other to get to the deeper basis of the conflict, which doesn't make any sense. The method doesn't make any sense to get to the goal. You're never going to get to that goal with that method. Insulting somebody's mother isn't going to get you to what the true debate is about. And it's nothing to do with the trash. Maybe it's about responsibility. And let's say it is not Zod's fault and it's his significant other's fault or whatever. But it doesn't matter because the feeling involved is you didn't do this small responsibility, and that makes me feel like you might not do the bigger responsibilities that we have. And so that feeling is what made me angry, and that's what the argument is about, is feeling like you might stop taking responsibility on the things that really matter. And, well, to get to that is not going to require erratic dialogue. It's going to require civil and calm or objective dialogue. But you still might not get to what it's really about or whatever, because you're dealing with emotions. But you at least stand a better chance. Anyways, started to use Zod as an example. I'm just, obviously, if he didn't take out the trash, it's totally his fault, and he should take out the trash because it's always his fault, right? Yeah, that's the trope of, that the husband just says, yes, dear, and that's how you have a happy life, right? But, if we're trying to be serious here, that anyways, okay, we're talking about pizza. What the hell? Okay. Jen says if you see her Twitter, she keeps reposting links to her blogs and somehow thinks blogs are proof a PhD should aim higher. Let me take another sort of tangent. This is the appeal to authority in a way. Just because somebody has a PhD doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to perform as a PhD will perform. And I don't think we should say should, although I think that is something that we want to do. It's like, well, I would expect more from somebody with a PhD. Yeah, but, that's up to them. So, I guess I don't care if they do or don't have a PhD. What I care about is the argument. And right now, this isn't even an argument. Let's see. What the hell? Ben, capitalism is unsustainable. What the fuck is going on here? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put him on timeout. Wow, no idea what the bleep was that about. Sorry about Ben, everybody. So yeah, okay. Where was I? What question? Number 3. Actually, I don't know what number we're on. If an atheist position is the universe a product of chance and necessity instead of the product of intelligence, how can he or she explain the fact the universe is structured rationally, logically, and mathematically, precision and predictability? This is the same question you've asked before, but you've asked it in a different way. You're basically asking us to explain the nature of reality. I don't know. But your question also assumes a lot of things. You're assuming that the universe is structured rationally. You're assuming that the universe is constructed logically. You're assuming that the universe is constructed with mathematical precision. You're assuming that the universe has predictability. Those things may or may not turn out to be true. Now, it might be the case that we've observed these things to be true so far, but that doesn't mean they're true everywhere in the universe. It means, at best, they're true within the localized universe that we've been able to explore thus far. But I don't even know if that's the case, because you haven't presented anything to indicate that that is indeed the way things are. You're just asking this as if it has been established that all of these things are true. And I don't know if they are or are not true. Thus, your question is still loaded. But let's just assume, for the benefit of doubt, that you're completely right and everything that you said is correct. And then you're asking, how do you explain these things? It's just the way reality is. In other words, there doesn't have to be an explanation deeper than that. This is akin to, they've done this test on younger kids, and they'll say, okay, imagine that there's a rock in the middle of a field, and is that rock there so that a bear can scratch its back? Or is it just there because it's there? The younger kids will tend to answer that it's there for the bear to scratch its back. As the kids get older, they tend to start to answer that the rock is just there, and there isn't a reason for it to be there. Now, what that tells us is that as we get older, we tend to stop assuming intent or reason for inanimate objects. But obviously, some of us never grow out of that, and what you make of that is your own conclusion. But basically, you're saying, well, why is the universe like that? Is akin to, why is the rock there? It's just there. There is no reason for it. It's just the way it is. Maybe it can't be any other way. Maybe it's the way it has to be. Who knows? And why wouldn't that be a decent answer? Or why can't I don't know be an answer? But let's just say that I say, the answer is lobster, because that's my answer. It's been my answer for years. I don't know why people don't listen to me. That's my answer. Well, you might say that's incoherent. I don't understand your answer. And I go, well, that's okay. Nobody understands lobster. How dare you question lobster? And then you're right. You're in the boat that you have us in, so to speak, because you don't have to try to make sense of how God's power functions. It just does. How does God have a mind without a body? It just does. It's just God. It's how it works. Well, how does it work? Where does this power come from? It comes from God. Well, what does that mean? Like, it's not using the same sort of energy as anything else, because energy would require physicalness. And you said God isn't physical. So how does it have power at all? Just because it does. So these are unanswerable questions by the theist. So the nature of God is that way because it is the nature of God. Well, I think I'll go with what Carl Sagan said in Cosmos. Why not save a step and say that the universe is because that's the nature of the universe? Let's see if anyone had any things on that. Troll alert. Yeah, I killed. Yeah, I'll give you. Let's see. Zod, I will make you moderator. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and I did mute them. They're back. Let's just go ahead and remove them, I guess. How do I even remove them? Hide user on this channel. There we go. There we go. User's message will now be hidden. Goodbye, Ben, forever. And then I'll just go ahead and go to his channel and block him for super mega sure. Go to the about page. Report. Oh, no, he is blocked. Okay, good. All right. So he's gone forever. Yay. All right. And then Dave B was another random troll. All right. Well, anyways, Zod is now mod. So I trust Zod. Haven't seen the thing from Zod lately. It's either hidden in my subscriptions or any other possibility. I don't know. Who knows? Pope Benedict said stuff I don't care about. That's the next paragraph. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Number 4. Larry Moron said, who's that? I don't know who this is. According to what we know about the natural world, humans are not special in any way, and life does not have a purpose. Richard Dawkins said, DNA neither cares nor knows. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. If atheists adhere to the belief that the purpose of human life is merely to procreate and survive, comma, is it possible to determine that human life has any more value than animal life, since animals share the same basic purpose? Okay. So first of all, I wouldn't call it a belief. That would be my first contention. I would call it accepting reality. The facts of the matter are that humans are not special, and that objectively speaking, life does not have an objective purpose other than to create life. DNA, objectively speaking, doesn't know anything. So these are not beliefs. They are just me accepting what reality is. The objective purpose of human life is procreation and survival. That is the fact. It's not a belief. It's a fact. Now, is it possible to determine that human life has more value than animal life? Possible in what sense? In an objective sense or in a subjective sense? If you're going for objective, no. No life is more or less valuable or invaluable than any other life. And bleep, inanimate objects also would have the same and or non-value as anything and everything else as well, because objectively speaking, we're a tiny, teeny, tiny speck of dust in a giant universe that doesn't even know that we're there. So objectively speaking, it doesn't matter. Subjectively, however, yes, you can make very good cases and arguments for it. But the thing that might be behind this question is, why do humans value humans over other life? And that's usually the case, but not always. There are some humans that will tell you that they value animals more than humans. Not to personal account, but I recall somebody's Facebook post where they said that they would save their dog over a human stranger. So if they had to save somebody's life and it was between their dog and a human stranger, that they would save their dog. Now, they were being honest, I assume. I wouldn't. I would save the human over the animal. And if it was a dog, I'd deliberately kill it because I hate dogs, and that's been well established. But at any rate, gonna get some hate mail on that. But at any rate, the point is, we value humans because we're humans. Number 5. Why have so many atheists? I forgot to check the feed. I'll do that in a moment. Why have so many atheists determined that the life of a fetus in a mother's womb is less valuable than the life of his or her mother? I don't know that many atheists have determined this. Where is your poll to indicate that many atheists have determined this? Show me the data. Stop making this assertion. You've asked this question many times in many different ways, and I submit that you are being dishonest intellectually and deliberately dishonest, because you know by now that we're going to ask you to cite some sort of thing that proves that atheists do in fact value the mother's life more than the fetus. Show me the study that has studied a reasonably high percentage of atheists on this particular question. Then you can ask that question after you show me that this is in fact even a thing in the first place. What standard did they use to value human life? Well, that I would think would also be answered by a poll like that. and would be answered by each individual atheist in a different way, because atheism, unlike theism, is not a worldview and does not prescribe any one particular thing. So you could ask instead, and it would be more honest to ask, do you as an atheist value a mother's life more than the fetus, comma, and or as another question, because these are two different questions that you're asking, what standard do you use to value human life, and or better way to phrase it, do you value life, and if you do, what standard do you use to do that, or something like that. You can phrase these way better than you do, and you could also unload these questions by actually listening to this particular atheist, well, skeptic, and then because I'm a skeptic, I'm an atheist, but whatever you want to call me, I don't, just don't call me late for dinner. Well, call me late for dinner. I don't care at this point, whatever. I, in reference to this particular question, you're asking essentially about abortion. And here's my view on abortion, because you asked sort of that, but you didn't really, but I'm granting you some liberty here. I'll go with data. Data is king for me. If the data says the thing, then that's what I go with, okay? The data shows us that abortion being legal has reduced crime, or you could say eliminated crime, because the people that would have been born, that would have become criminals, simply weren't born. It has increased the decreased poverty. It has done a lot of things. Now, why? Well, because these mothers, if they had those kids, would then be required by law to take care of those kids, and also not just by law, but by their own instincts. And some of them, or all of them, could hypothetically offer them up for adoption, but but that's difficult to do, to want to do, and might be difficult to do depending on where you live. So societies that allow for abortion show, and there's a direct correlation that is graphed, and I'd have to pull it up. If I was to do a blog like this, I'd actually have all the studies for you, but since this is a live stream, I don't. But at any rate, the burden was on you to prove that your thing. Anyway, so across the board, what I know of the data shows that societies that allow for abortion do better than those that don't. That's one. So because of that, because the data says this helps us, I think that we should allow it. I don't like that we have to allow it. I don't like that people have to perish and die. But I also don't like that somebody could come into existence that its own mother didn't want in the first place. Because that kid is probably not going to be raised very well because the mother didn't want them. So sometimes the mother will get over this, but I'm assuming that they never do. And I can only imagine that that kid's life would not be very good. And thus they wouldn't become a very good adult, and thus society would suffer as a result. If we want this practice to end, and we do not want abortions to happen at all, then there are steps that must be taken by those who are anti-abortion. Number one, teach sexual education. There's a correlation shown to the more kids know about sex, the less they wind up having sex. And when they do have sex, the less likely it is that they get pregnant because they know the risks and they know how to protect themselves, which goes to number two. Provide contraceptives of all sorts, both condoms and pills and whatever else, potatoes, whatever else you got. Potatoes is a flashback to a different hangout I was in. Go ahead and look up potato used as contraceptive for a good laugh later. Or do it right now if you're tired of listening to my voice. Whatever. A woman tried to use a potato as a contraceptive. Spoiler, it didn't work. Okay. I got to check chat after that. Okay. At any rate, so if we want to be anti-abortion, we should say more sexual education. We should demand that be required nationwide from the youngest age period. And perhaps in every dang grade that we should require sexual education at every level. Oh, but the innocence of the children. Yeah, you know what? The more you know, the less likely it is that you'll be taken advantage of. So, tell them when they're, first in school. Don't wait. And provide the contraceptives. Secondly, or third, invest into scientific research that could find a way to turn off being able to have kids and turn it back on later. So some sort of pill or shot or whatever that we could take that then we could easily counteract later on, and or a surgery that could be performed and then undone at a later date. These things could hypothetically be done, but would need money. So put your money where your mouth is and fund science to do those things. And then last, we would also, number 4 would be fund science to explore possibility of artificial wombs and ways to transfer a fetus from the mother into the artificial womb safely. So that's very sci-fi sounding, but it's hypothetically possible. And that would, if that was an option, and let's say that going in to have your unborn removed, let's say that all the fail-safes we had failed you somehow. You've taken your shot to prevent getting pregnant. You've used contraceptive, but like Malcolm in Jurassic Park, life found a way. And so you're like, look, I don't want this to happen. And they say, okay, well, we have this procedure where we remove that and we put it in a artificial womb, and it can, somebody else can adopt it. Or hell, we've also developed cryogenics and we can freeze it until somebody wants a kid. Why not? But and at that point, if we had all of that in place and it was really safe to get the artificial womb transfer procedure done and all that, then I think that you could say it's illegal to do abortion at that time. But here and now, with the technology we have, no, we can't do it. It would hurt our society. So if you really want it not to be done, put your money where your mouth is, or at least argue for the policies like teaching sexual education to young kids that would lessen this as a problem. And also work on improving the adoption centers where you're at it. Because many of them are overcrowded, understaffed, underfunded, and run by religious institutions who won't give the kids away to gay people and stuff like this. So make your own adoption center. So you solve this problem. Don't ask other people to do it, and don't take the lazy way out of saying, well, it's just this simple, easy policy change that will make everything better. You didn't think hard enough. What standards do I use to value human life? The same standards I use to value all life, except for the life that bothers me, like dogs and bugs that hurt me, or insects in general. Life is valuable because it's finite. It is our mortality that defines us as humans. It is valuable because it is fleeting. I use logic and reason and compassion to guide that answer. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, Stephanie. All right, any questions, comments, and or other keywords you want to direct at me from the chat, please do so now. Yeah. Again, with the Christian thing of, that you did this action, therefore you deserve the consequences. Well, look, our bodies want to have sex, okay, especially when we're teenagers, you know. So the sooner that when we recognize the fact that in the state of Texas where they tried doing celibacy and it failed epically because they had high birth rates and high teen birth rates, but yet in states where they did sexual education at younger levels, they had lower teen rates of pregnancy and lower rates of pregnancy. So the earlier you teach kids about sex and what it's all about, the less likely it seems that they will go out and do it. And if they do it, then they'll at least do it safely because they will understand the consequence. Because it's one thing to say, well, if you go have sex, you'll have a kid. Well, yeah, that's fine, but it's not enough. It really isn't. And just hearing that from your mom or dad isn't going to be enough. You need to hear it from multiple authority figures, probably more than once. And you need to see that it's a thing. And you need to really understand that it's a thing. Then you can accept that it's a consequence. Whether or not you'll make a good decision after that, who knows? But if they went out and had sex and now are pregnant and you're saying, well, they should live with that consequence, what about you as the parent? Didn't you fail that kid in some way, shape, or form? Because obviously they didn't understand it as a consequence. So where's your responsibility? But no, I don't think that this idea that abortion is some sort of birth control after the fact, I think that's probably, if you were to take some study, my belief is that it would be a very low amount of people who do this. Because you already have to jump through a lot of hoops to get an abortion as it is. And I can only imagine what it would be like to do that ordeal and to have to make that choice and how terrible that might make you feel. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. But if we want to address it, then we must address all the things that actually will solve the problem and not just pretend that it will solve itself or whatever. Whew. Let's see, what else? Any other things for me or? Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think is there any question directed for me or comments you want to throw at me in the chat before I log out here? Because I read however many that wasn't 5 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, at least 8. I don't know. Probably more than that. Okay, well, when I did a little search on this document, I have 33 question marks. So I'm going to go with 33 questions in total. Okay, I'll subtract 1 for that. That's a download link. So 32. Oh, no, the rest of the questions are in the comments. So let's say at least 10. There's actually 10 questions here, not 5. I don't know. Somebody else did the math. I don't care anymore. Yeah, I didn't answer the questions. Let's just mock God will deny him in my heart. Yeah, well, that's possible, I suppose. Now, the other thing I'd like to ask is, what do we mean by plausible answers? What does that mean? Like, how do you even gauge that? Like, well, that answer is not plausible. Any answer is, what do you mean by, like, it's magic? Because that's not plausible either, is it? You know, God did it. A wizard did it. You know, whatever. I don't know. Anyone? And no one have any things for me then? Okay. Anyone want to get in here and talk to me real quick, or do I turn this off and eat turtles because lobsters are awesome? And if you haven't read the Lobsterist book, that's the only true book out there. and he even says in the book that it's true. So I don't know why you would not read it. I mean, it's not like I haven't linked it a million times. Zod should do a video about it. Maybe that's why nobody's read it. Like, because Zod hasn't debunked it or something. I don't know. Plausible equals comport with SJ's worldview. Probably, possibly. That might be what it is. Okay, well, anyways, I rant well. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for your words of kindness and otherwise that you had for me in the chat. And not thank you for the troll that we had to kick out. Okay. This is a good comment made by Colonel Crappy. I love his name now. This is Disturbing Trends. By the way, guys, gals, and everybody else, Disturbing Trends had his channel taken down by YouTube. And if any of you have any ideas of how he can get it back, let Colonel Crappy know. And if you don't have ideas, then never mind. But I thought I'd throw that out there. What was I was gonna read the dang comment. Well, it's gone now. Lavender Lady says there's a very interesting chapter on abortion and crime rate in Freakonomics. I think there probably would be. I think they mentioned it also in the movie. It's been a while since I watched that movie, though, so I'd have to go and check it out again. But don't say dildo. Why not? Dildo, 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 dildo. I said it a million times. I didn't say it that many times. I don't think I could say. I got your potato right here, pal. Okay, dildo. Abortion's an invasive procedure. It should be used sparingly. Ideally, yes. Unfortunately, that's that's the thing. Where was the comment that I wanted to read? Oh well, I don't remember now. I could eat a bit of alphabet soup and shit out a better argument. Well, I that's possible. I don't know. Has anyone ever tried that? Like eating? Wouldn't you have to like swallow the alphabet soup whole to get any letter to pass through correctly? Maybe if they're made out of corn. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you guys, gals, robots, etc. Be sure to subscribe to each other, like everything and all that, and share and social and Twitter and Patreon and thumbs up and all. I don't have Patreon. I don't know. Whatever you guys. I don't know. So yeah. That's it. I'm stopping the broadcast. Lobsters exist. Wait. Yeah. Okay. There. Okay. Lobsters exist. Okay. Now this time for sure. Hitting the button. Wait. Maybe I should post the Hangout link in the chat and see if anyone joins after I hit the button. What would happen? I don't know. Would that work? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to post the thing, and then I'm going to hit... No, that's the wrong thing. All right. Hitting the button. Good night.